Political Science class. Today, I will continue Lesson 7 Organs of the Government, the Executive. I will discuss today Day 3 topic, that's the Political Executive Features and Powers. Students, this covers your pages from 273 till 284. The objectives are lesson are divided into 6 days, and as already I told you, I will be discussing today topic of the day 3. The objectives of the day 3 are: first I will discuss the introduction of the topic, then Parliamentary Executive of India, its salient features, then Indian Executive, the President of India, then powers of the President. There are 5 types of powers of the President. These are executive powers, legislative powers, financial powers, judicial powers, and emergency powers. Finally, I will discuss position and role of the President. Again, I am telling you this covers your pages from 273 till 284. Now, before the discussion of these objectives, I would like to discuss the key terms with you. The first key term is Electoral College. The President of India is elected by the members of Electoral College consisting of the elected members of both the Houses of Parliament and the elected members of the legislative assemblies of the states, including National Capital Territory of Delhi and the Union Territory of Puducherry. Nominated members in the legislature don't participate in the elections of the president. In 2022, the 17th presidential election will be held in India. Students, here I have talked about the Electoral College. This is a body consisting of all the MLAs and MPs and those who are elected. The nominate members don't participate in the elections of the president. Even the union territories of Delhi and Puducherry members also participate because they also have assemblies. Only these are the 2 union territories which have the assemblies, and their members also are the members of the Electoral College. Next year in 2022, 17th presidential election will take place in India. Next key term is individual responsibility of a minister. Each minister has 2 types of responsibilities. One is individual and second is collective. First, I will discuss the individual responsibility of a minister. Individual responsibility means that each minister is individually responsible to the president, indirectly to the prime minister, for the department under his care. Members of the parliament are entitled to question the ministers, and the ministers are responsible for action or negligence of their respective departments. So you see, each minister is individually responsible to the president. Indirectly, it's the prime minister to whom everyone is responsible. Suppose any minister is not working with responsibility, it's the prime minister who can change him anytime during his prime ministership. This is individual responsibility of a minister. The second is collective responsibility of Council of Ministers, means full team. Cabinet's collective responsibility, also known as the collective ministerial responsibility, is a constitutional convention in parliamentary systems that members of the cabinet must publicly support all governmental decisions made in cabinet, even if they do not privately agree with them. A vote of no confidence passed against a minister can dissolve complete government. So they all swim and sink together. Here you see, full team of Council of Ministers is collectively responsible in the legislature. Anything done wrong by one minister even can be harmful for the complete government. A vote of no confidence passed against single minister can dissolve the complete legislature because they all swim and sink together. This is collective responsibility of the Council of Ministers. The next key term is joint session. Joint session of Indian Parliament has been called for only 3 bills. First was Dowry Prohibition Bill 1961, then Banking Service Commission Repeal Bill 1978, and then Prevention of Terrorism Bill 2002. A joint session is when two normally separate decision making groups meet together for a specific purpose. Most often, it refers to when both the houses of parliament sit together. Students, I think so you know it very well. Each bill is passed in the both houses of parliament and then it goes to the president for signature. Then it becomes a law. And if both the houses of parliament disagree over the bill, they don't agree on a particular issue, then it becomes a situation of deadlock. Then this situation of deadlock can be solved by the president. He will call the joint session of both the houses. Until today, there have been joint session over three bills in India in 1961, in 1978 and 2002. The next key term is President's Address. The President of India addresses both the Rajya Sabha and the Lok Sabha at the beginning of the first session after each general elections when the reconstituted lower house meets for the first time. The President also addresses both the houses at the beginning of the first session of each year. The President's speech essentially highlights the government's policy, priorities, and plans for the upcoming year. The address provides a broad framework of the government's agenda and direction. Now, President's address is a speech prepared by the Council of Ministers, and President delivers the speech in the both the houses when they are sitting together. They sit together when it is the first session of the year, means the budget session it is. Then first day the president have a joint session and addresses them and talks about the agenda and direction of the government in the full year. And secondly, the president addresses them together when they are meeting after the newly formed government. When the government is formed, that time they meet together, they sit together, and president addresses them. So these are the two events when president addresses them together. Next is Contingency Fund of India. The example is the Contingency Fund of India exists for disasters and related unforeseen expenditures. Contingency Fund enables the government to meet unforeseen expenditure which cannot wait approval of the parliament. This fund is at the disposal of the president. Any expenditure incurred from this fund requires a subsequent approval from the parliament. Students, normally every bill comes to the parliament and after that the action is taken on it. But this is the thing when suppose any unforeseen things happen, means any disaster comes, any earthquake comes, or floods are there, or pandemic which is going on these days, it is there, then the government needs unforeseen expenditures. And to manage this expenditure, the president can order to have a money from the Contingency Fund of India. Later on, when the parliament will have session, it will get approval. Now I am going to start day 3 topic, that is political executive features and powers. Now political executive includes Prime Minister, his Council of Ministers and the President of India. All these I am going to discuss today. The Constitution grants all the executive powers of the Union to the President of India and empowers him to exercise these either directly or through officers subordinate to him. All the executive powers are used in the name of the President of India. In fact, these are exercised by the Prime Minister and his Council of Ministers. The Prime Minister and the Council of Ministers advise and help the President and the president always acts in accordance with the advice given. The prime minister is real center of power. So you see here I have told that the president is the head of the state, but prime minister is the head of the government. Now president is making final order, but all these orders are made on the advice of the prime minister and his council of ministers. So president exercises his powers on the aid and advice of the prime minister and council of ministers. So prime minister is the real center of power. The president is elected indirectly by the people, that is, by the elected members of the two houses of Union Parliament and all the elected members of all the state legislative assemblies known as the Electoral College. This thing I just told you what is Electoral College. The Prime Minister and the other ministers are also appointed from amongst members of two houses of the Union Parliament. The Prime Minister and all the other ministers belong to the party or coalition group which has a majority in the Lok Sabha. Hence, India has an elected executive. So you see, Indian executive consists of President, Prime Minister and Council of Ministers. So you see, here I have discussed that all are elected. President is elected indirectly by Electoral College and Prime Minister is elected directly by the citizens of India. And Prime Minister is always the leader of the majority party in the Lok Sabha. So here the executive is elected in India. Now I will discuss Parliamentary Executive of India, its salient features. The first feature is President as nominal executive head. The example is according to Article 74 of the Constitution, the advice of the Prime Minister and his Council of Ministers binds the President. The President and the Council of Ministers work in close cooperation. The President is the constitutional head of the executive in India. However, the President exercises all the powers in accordance with the advice of the Prime Minister and Council of Ministers. Such an advice is binding upon the President. The President is, as such, only nominal head of the state. All the acts are expressed to have been taken by the President, but in reality, these are the acts of the Council of Ministers and the Prime Minister. So obviously the President is nominal head because according to Article 74 of the Constitution, he is to work on the advice of Prime Minister and Council of Ministers. Imagine a situation if President is not working on the advice of Prime Minister and his Council of Ministers. Tell me what will happen in that situation. Yes, I'll tell you, it will be unconstitutional. And the thing is, if President works anything unconstitutional, he will be impeached, means he will be removed from his seat. So Constitution doesn't allow the President to be the real head. So according to Constitution, the President is only a nominal head of the state. The second feature is leader of the majority party. When Dr. Manmohan Singh became the Prime Minister of India, he was member of Rajya Sabha, but his party was Congress was majority in the Lok Sabha and they selected him as their leader. So you see here the example is telling us that Dr. Manmohan Singh became the Prime Minister of India, but he was member of Rajya Sabha that time and the party which supported him, that was Congress party, and the party was in majority in the Lok Sabha. So this condition is fulfilled that the leader who becomes a prime minister the party must be in majority in the Lok Sabha. So it was completed when Dr. Manmohan Singh became the Prime Minister of India. In the recent elections held in West Bengal, Mamata Banerjee lost the seat from Nandigram, where she contested elections, but her party got majority. Her party got majority, that's Trinamool Congress, but she lost the elections from Nandigram. As being the party leader, she was selected to be the chief minister. But now She has total 6 months time till October 2021, up to which she must become member of state legislature. Otherwise, she will step down. So this is what Constitution says. If a person is not a member of legislature and the party selects him as a leader, he can be appointed as chief minister or prime minister, but within 6 months that person must get the membership of the legislature. Otherwise, the leader is to step down. The legislature will not dissolve because legislature has majority, party is in majority. Only the leader is not member. Then the party will select its own new leader. The Council of Ministers is formed by the party which enjoys the support of the majority in the Lok Sabha. Every minister, including the Prime Minister, has to be a member of either House of Parliament. If any non member is made a minister or Prime Minister, he has to secure membership within 6 months, failing which he cannot continue his office. The same thing applies to the state legislatures. So I have discussed with you both the example. State legislature example, I have given you recent elections of Trinamool Congress in Bengal. Mamata Banerjee's case is recent case. So she must get the membership till October 2021. The next feature is individual responsibility of each minister. Recently, a change was there in Prime Minister Modi's Council of Ministers. I think so, you know it very well. It was in July only. On 7 July, there was change in Modi's Council of Ministers. Each minister is individually responsible for the department he runs, and if the Prime Minister is not satisfied with the working of any minister, he will change him during the period of 5 years to save the goodwill of his party and his government. So, this is allowed by the Constitution. The Prime Minister can make any change in his Council of Ministers during the period of 5 years. The tenure of Lok Sabha is 5 years if party is in majority, but the minister's tenure is not 5 years. They can be changed any time by the choice of Prime Minister, and he will tell the President to change the minister. In this period of pandemic, that's COVID-19, the responsibility of the Union Health Minister increased. But now Modi has changed the earlier Health Minister, Dr. Harshvardhan, and now the new Health Minister, Mansukh L. Mandavia, has been appointed. Now you see, a new health minister is appointed instead of Dr. Harshvardhan. There must be something due to which the Prime Minister is not satisfied with the working of the health minister. Recently, in the last 2 3 months, we were getting the news about the shortage of oxygen in the hospitals and the shortage of vaccines in India. So, these are the things which make the government responsible. Just to handle the situation, now Modi has changed the health minister because he is to save his government. The goodwill of the government is very much important for the next elections. Each minister is responsible and accountable before the Lok Sabha for all acts of his department which he heads. In case the Prime Minister finds him negligent towards the department he heads, the Prime Minister changes the minister to save his government. Otherwise, his government is responsible in the legislature. So, it is the Prime Minister who feels that the minister must be responsible, and if he feels that particular minister is not running the department properly, he can change him anytime. This is the individual responsibility of each minister to the Prime Minister. According to Constitution, there is a president, but indirectly it's a Prime Minister. Next is collective responsibility of the government. Now here is the government collective responsibility. The example is a Prime Minister must have the confidence of the Lok Sabha, the lower house of the Parliament of India. However, the term of Prime Minister can end before the end of the Lok Sabha's term if a simple majority of its members no longer have confidence in him or her. This is called a vote of no confidence. Yes, students, if suppose his party loses the confidence in the leader, they can leave him anytime and the party will go in minority. Obviously, the Lok Sabha will be dissolved. And this happened in 1999. On 17th April 1999, the Bharatiya Janata Party coalition government, led by Prime Minister Atal Bihari Vajpayee, failed to win a confidence vote in the Lok Sabha by a single vote due to the withdrawal of one of the government's coalition partners, that's AIADMK. You know, AIADMK is a regional party of Tamil Nadu and its leader was Ms. Jayalalitha. She supported this BJP party coalition government and the party was running its government, but in April 1999 vote of no confidence was introduced because Jayalalitha took back the support and due to just one vote the Lok Sabha was dissolved and the full India suffered again the re-elections. You know, when the elections are held, it's not a small thing. It's a big burden on the public only because the expenditure is taken from the public by the election commission in the form of taxes we pay. So this was done by in 1999. The Council of Ministers is collectively responsible before the Lok Sabha. The Council of Ministers works as a united team. All the ministers are collectively bound by such a decision or policy of the cabinet. In case the parliament rejects any policy or budget or any measure for legislation initiated by the Council of Ministers, the entire Council of Ministers resign and the government is dissolved. You know, it's not that every time vote of no confidence will be introduced. If suppose any bill is introduced or any policy introduced or any budget is introduced in the legislature and it doesn't pass, and what does it show? Means the government has lost the majority and it results in vote of no confidence. This is what we call the collective responsibility of the government. Now, I will discuss the structure of the Council of Ministers. Students, there are three types of ministers: cabinet ministers, ministers of states, and deputy ministers. First, I will talk about the cabinet ministers. This is the most powerful policy making and the decision making part of the Council of Ministers, and their number is between 50 to 20. So they are just 15 to 20 in number, and they are most important body which frames all the policies of the government. Now some examples are given here, like Shri Rajnath Singh, he is the Minister of Defense. Shri Amit Shah, he is the Minister of Home Affairs and Minister of Cooperation. Shrimati Nirmala Sitharaman, she is Minister of Finance and Minister of Corporate Affairs. Dr. Subramaniam Jaishankar is a Minister of External Affairs. Shri Ashwini Vaishnav, he is the Minister of Railways. And Shri Kiran Rijiju, he is Minister of Law and Justice. So these are the cabinet ministers holding the most important departments of the government. Now I will talk about the ministers of state. They constitute the second category of ministers. A minister of state either holds an independent charge of a small department or is attached to a cabinet minister. So you see, I have talked about the ministers of state. They are doing two types of duties. Either they hold an independent charge of small department, not big department, because big departments are given to the cabinet ministers. So either they are given the independent charge of the small departments or they are attached with the cabinet ministers. Such ministers attend the meetings of the cabinet only when they are invited by the prime minister or the cabinet. So they can't attend the cabinet meetings themselves. They are invited by the prime minister or the cabinet minister to attend the meetings. Now I will discuss some examples of the ministers of state like Shri Danve. Rao Sahib Dada Rao is a Minister of State in the Ministry of Railways. Shri Nityanand Rai is a Minister of State in the Ministry of Home Affairs. And Shri Pankaj Chaudhary is a Minister of State in the Ministry of Finance. So all these ministries like Ministry of Railway and Ministry of Home Affairs and Ministry of Finance, I have talked in the last slide about the cabinet ministers. So these are the ministers of state who are helping the cabinet ministers in their same departments. Next is the deputy ministers. Deputy ministers are given the responsibility to prepare answers to the parliamentary questions as to be given during question hour with respect to the department. They are helping ministers attached to the cabinet ministers or the ministers of state. No deputy ministers hold an independent charge of any department. His function is to help the minister under whom he works. They help the concerned department minister in the legislature during the question hour and thus help in saving the government. So, deputy ministers don't hold any independent charge, means the ministers of state are given the small department, but the deputy ministers are not at all given any department independently. They are either helping the cabinet ministers or the ministers of state. And if they are not attached to any minister, they are having the responsibility to prepare the answers to the parliamentary questions which are to be replied in the question hour. Students, if you remember, that question hour is the first hour of the working day during the session of the House when the opposition members ask the question to the ruling party minister. Now, suppose today the railway minister is to reply any question asked to him, uh, and the opposition members have asked him the question. It is not suddenly they have asked. Previously, the speaker fixes the date and time when the particular member will ask the question to particular minister. So the railway minister in advance was told about that today you will reply this question. But the railway minister needs the complete data to reply. Then who is to supply this data? It is the deputy ministers. So deputy ministers prepare the answers to the parliamentary questions. Along with them, there is a team of the civil servants, permanent executives, who are giving the data to the deputy ministers, and deputy ministers provide all this data to the cabinet ministers, and this way they save the government. This is called collective responsibility. So deputy ministers play an important role in the collective responsibility to save the government. Next feature is centrally important position of the prime minister. The powers that the constitution vests in the president are exercised by the cabinet, which stands dominated by the prime minister. The Indian prime minister enjoys a constitutionally superior status as the constitution describes him as the head of the council of ministers. The prime minister gets his appointment by the virtue of being the leader of the majority party in the Lok Sabha. In the appointment of other ministers, the president is bound by the advice of the prime minister. As the head of the government, leader of the cabinet, leader of the majority, leader of the parliament, and leader of the nation, the prime minister plays an important role in the policy making and decision making. So you see, I have discussed that Prime Minister is centrally important person and he enjoys very important place and position in the government. He is always the leader of the majority party in the Lok Sabha. In the beginning of discussion of today's topic, I gave you example of Dr. Manmohan Singh. He was the member of Rajya Sabha, but his party was in majority in the Lok Sabha, so party selected him to be the prime minister. So this is what constitution is telling us. The prime minister must be the leader of majority party in the Lok Sabha. He may be in the Rajya Sabha or he may be in the Lok Sabha, but his party must be in power in majority in the Lok Sabha. and Prime Minister enjoys very important place in the party. He decides about all the policies and the names of the ministers, and every decision is made according to his choice. Now I'm going to discuss the next executive, that is the President of India. The Constitution declares India to be a sovereign, socialist, secular, democratic republic. For securing the objective of making India a republic, the Constitution provides for an elected head of state with indirect method of election of the president. The president is elected by an electoral college consisting of the elected members of both the houses of Union Parliament and the state legislative assemblies. Here, students, I will discuss with you, I will tell you that Constitution tells us that India is a sovereign, socialist, secular, democratic republic. Now, here I am talking about the word republic only. You know what is republic? Republic means where head of the state is elected. Now, you know who is the head of state in India? He is the president and he is elected. There are two types of elections, direct or indirect. He is not elected directly. He is elected indirectly by the Electoral College. So this is how India becomes a republic. Now I will discuss the qualifications to be the President of India. The Constitution lays down the following qualifications for a candidate seeking elections to the office of President. First is he should be the citizen of India. This is very common qualification for all the government jobs, that a person must be citizen of India. Second is he should have completed the age of 35 years. Again, this is very common qualification, that anyone who is above 35 years can think about to be the president, like even I can also think. Then he should not hold any office of profit, means he should not be having any government job. So anyone who is not enjoying government job can think about to be the president. He should not be a member of either house of parliament. So any citizen who is not member of parliament can think about to be the president. So are you finding it very easy to be the president? But it's not like this. Now I will tell you why it is not so easy. Now I will discuss the next qualifications. Along with these qualifications, the candidate shall deposit a security of rupees 15,000 with this nomination papers. You know, nomination papers have complete detail of the candidate who is contesting elections. So many details are required there, and these are very important and legal details. Okay. And the next qualification is his name should be proposed by 50 and seconded by another 50 members of the Electoral College. This is the qualification which makes the person difference, anyone of Indian, any citizen of India cannot think about to be the president, because all other qualifications so anyone can fulfill, but this qualification very difficult to fulfill, because at least 100 members of Electoral College must support him, then only he can contest election. Means 50 should propose his name and 50 should support his name, second his name. So in the beginning, means before the elections, the 100 members of Electoral College should be with him. Then president is elected indirectly by the members of the Electoral College. Yes, the voting is indirectly in the Electoral College. The nominated members of the Parliament and state legislative assemblies have been denied a share in the presidential election to avoid any possible influence of a sitting president upon such members. Yes, the nominated members are not allowed to take part in the elections of the president. I think so. You remember, two Anglo Indians are nominated by the president to the Lok Sabha, and 12 members are appointed by president to the Rajya Sabha. So these members don't participate in the elections of the president because they were nominated by the president. how is it possible for them to participate in the elections? Because it is possible that they can be influenced by the sitting president to use their vote in their favor if suppose the same president is contesting the elections for the second tenure. Now, I will discuss the powers of the President of India. Being the head of parliamentary system, the President is only a constitutional head and exercises only nominal powers. It is mandatory for the President to act in accordance with the advice of the Council of Ministers, which is headed by the Prime Minister. This already I have discussed with you under Article 74. The President is to work on aid and advice of the Prime Minister and his Council of Ministers. Now, the powers of the President can be divided into these given categories. Number 1, executive powers. Number 2, legislative powers. Number 3, financial powers. Number 4, judicial powers. And number 5, emergency powers. So, there are total 5 types of powers of the President. Now, first, I am going to discuss the executive powers of the president. The example is after the 1996 general election, the BJP emerged as the single largest party in the Lok Sabha, the lower house of parliament. Vajpayee was invited by President Shankar Dayal Sharma to form the government. But after 13 days in office, he was unable to muster a governing majority and resigned. He was succeeded by H.D. Devegowda, leader of the United Front coalition headed by Indian National Congress. So you must have seen the words which are here. First, Vajpayee was invited by Shankar Dayal Sharma because Vajpayee was the leader of the largest party. I am not talking here the majority party. Majority means more than 50%. But the largest can be any number. It doesn't mean he must have reached up to 50 number. So it was the largest than the other all parties which are lower to him. So he was invited because he was the leader of the largest party. But he was to prove the majority within a few days. But after 13 days in office, he was unable to prove the majority. And then Vajpayee resigned. And then what was the solution with the president Shankar Dayal Sharma? It is not that he was to dissolve the legislature and again to conduct the elections and it will be again a big burden on the public of India because the expenditure of the elections ultimately goes from the pocket of the citizens who pay in the form of taxes. Even the election commission needs 6 months time at least to manage the elections. So the president worked according to the constitution. The constitution says in case the leader is unable to form the government, then the president is to call the second highest party. So the president invited H.D. Devegowda, who was the leader of the second highest party, and then it was headed by the Indian National Congress. The party was a coalition party, United Front, and luckily, H.D. Devegowda proved the majority in a given time, and he was successful in running the government for complete 5 years. So, executive powers of the president are the president of India appoints the leader of the majority party in Lok Sabha as the prime minister. He can ask the prime minister to prove the majority within a fixed period on the floor of the house. In case the prime minister fails to prove his majority in the Lok Sabha, he quits office, as was done by the Prime Minister Atal Bihari Vajpayee. The president invited him, but he could not prove his majority. In this event, the president either appoints a new prime minister, as he did in the case here is the example of H.D. Devegowda, and asks him to prove the majority, or decides to dissolve the Lok Sabha and order fresh elections. So here in this case, fresh elections was just a joke. After 13 days of formation of Lok Sabha, fresh elections are a joke only. So the president invited the leader of the second highest party and to prove the majority some days were given, and H.D. Devagowda was successful in proving the majority. Now, next example of executive powers is in May 1969, when President Dr. Zakir Hussain died, the then Vice President Bibi Giri began acting as a president because our constitution says if president is not on his seat, the vice president will work as a president. So here President Dr. Zakir Hussain died and vice president started working as the president. But later he resigned. He means vice president. He resigned from his post of vice president. Why? What is the reason? To contest the presidential election. You know, the qualification to be the president, he should not hold any office of profit. I have discussed today's lecture. So, as he was holding the office of profit, he was vice president. So, he resigned, so he could only in this condition could contest the election of president. Then the Chief Justice of India, Mr. Hidayatullah, worked as the officiating President of India. This is also given in our constitution that in case of absence of the President of India from his seat, the Vice President acts as a President. In case both are absent, the Chief Justice of India acts as the President, that's as the head of the state. So this thing has happened only once in India when Justice Hidayatullah worked as the President of India. The President of India administers the pledge of office to the Chief Justice of India, and the Chief Justice of India administers the pledge of office to the President. So you see, both are pledging to each other. President administers pledge to the Chief Justice and Chief Justice administers pledge to the President of India. Now I will continue with executive powers. On 26 January every year, military personnel are awarded the bravery medals. These are Paramveer Chakra, Veer Chakra and Mahavir Chakra. Even children are awarded with Pradhan Mantri Rashtriya Bal Puraskar. The President grants titles and honors like Padma Shri, Padma Vibhushan, Bharat Ratna to the distinguished persons who have rendered distinguished services in the field of arts, science, literature, or social services. The President is the supreme commander of the defense forces of India and makes all the higher defense appointments. He grants all the military honors and titles for acts of bravery during the peace and war. The next powers of the president are legislative powers. The example is in 2006, the President APJ Abdul Kalam used his veto power when he not only refused to sign the bill and instead of sending the bill back to the Prime Minister, he sent it to the Speaker of Lok Sabha and the Chairman of the Rajya Sabha. Means that the President Abdul Kalam sent back the bill to the both houses, Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha. President is not a member of the parliament, but no bill passed by the parliament become an act without the signature of the president. He can use his discretionary power by rejecting the bill once. So this is what this discretionary power was used by President Abdul Kalam, and he proved he is not just a puppet, he is not just a golden zero. He has discretionary power to reject the bill once, and he sent the bill in 2006, and this bill was related to the office of profit, and this has become a very historic moment when he returned the bill. The president has the power to summon and prorogue the sessions of the parliament. However, the gap between the two sessions can't be more than 6 months. So all the legislature have a meeting or the session on the summoning of the president. As nowadays the monsoon session has started and the monsoon session was summoned by the president. In case of disagreement between the two houses over a bill and there is a deadlock, then it can be resolved in the joint sitting of both the houses summoned by the president. In the beginning of the lecture, I gave you example of three bills on the basis of which there have been joint session till today. The President addresses both the Houses of Parliament at the first session of each year. In his address, he outlines the policies of the government, and this address is called the President's Address, where he outlines the policies of the government. And I have told you this address is not of his own choice. This is prepared by the Prime Minister and his Council of Ministers. Next, I am going to discuss the financial powers of the president. The example is Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman, member Rajya Sabha, introduced budget in the Lok Sabha in 2021. As the bill came to Lok Sabha with prior approval of the president, so he couldn't refuse to give his signature later. You know that money bill comes to the Lok Sabha with the prior approval of the president. So obviously, president can't refuse to sign it later. No money bill can be introduced in parliament without the prior consent of the president. The Contingency Fund of India exists for disasters and related unforeseen expenditures. The Contingency Fund of the Union government is at the disposal of the President of India, who releases the funds on the request of the Union Cabinet, which later gets an approval from Parliament. So you see, if the union needs any money for the unforeseen circumstances, like any earthquake comes in any state, or there are floods, and or this pandemic is going on these days, any funds are required by the government which were not covered in the budget. Then in that situation, the president can order to use the money from the contingency fund, and later on it can be approved by the parliament. The next are the judicial powers. President Ramnath Kovind rejected the mercy petition of Pawan Kumar Gupta, one of the four men who on the death row in the 2012 Nirbhaya gang rape and murder case. Gupta was the last to file the mercy plea. The petitions of the other three convicts had been rejected earlier by the president, as the petition didn't have any legal ground to save them. As head of the state, the president has the power to grant pardon or remission in respect of criminals facing death sentence. In considering all mercy petitions, the president depends upon his own discretion and decides the matter on legal ground to save the petitioner. Students, I think so you know it very well that in case of capital punishment or the death sentence, when it is given by the Supreme Court of India, there is one power in the hands of the victim, that he can make a mercy petition to the President of India, and the President can either accept it or reject it. And in the case of Nirbhaya gang rape case, there were four victims, and they one of them, Pawan Kumar Gupta, made this mercy petition, and this was rejected by the president because president didn't find any legal ground to save him. Already three victims have been refused mercy petition. So this is the judicial power of the president, and here the president uses his discretion. Again, he is not a golden zero. He can use his discretion, but discretion doesn't mean without any legal ground or any legal advice. He will take the advice, and then only he will accept or refuse the mercy petition. As the head of the state, the president has the power to grant pardon or remission in respect of criminals facing death sentence. In considering all mercy petitions, the president depends upon his own discretion and decides the matter on legal ground to save the petitioner. Next is emergency powers. The example is the president can declare three types of emergencies. These are national emergency, state emergency, and financial emergency. The President of India, Fakhruddin Ali Ahmed, proclaimed a state of national emergency on 25th June 1975 when Indira Gandhi was the Prime Minister of India. So this is example when Fakhruddin Ali Ahmed, the President of India, declared national emergency and Mrs. Indira Gandhi was the Prime Minister of India. This emergency was till 1977. So, in respect of national emergency, the federal structure of India converts into unitary structure. The Union Parliament gets the power to make laws over the subjects of the state list. The President exercises emergency power in accordance with the advice of the Prime Minister and his Council of Ministers. So you see, here also the President is to work on the advice of Prime Minister, and here Mrs. Indira Gandhi advised Fakhruddin Ali Ahmed to impose the national emergency in India, and in that case the federal structure converted into unitary structure, and the union government could legislate on the subjects given in the state list in the Constitution of India. Means Prime Minister can act as a dictator that time in the case of national emergency, and this happened in India. The next is position and role of the President. The President of India is a nominal and constitutional head who exercises almost all his powers on the advice of Prime Minister and Council of Ministers. So constitutionally you see, President is no doubt head of the state, but head of the government is Prime Minister. So President here we can say he's golden zero or he is just a puppet. However, despite such provisions, the President is not merely a figurehead or a rubber stamp in the hands of ministry, as he can use his discretion while signing the bill and accepting mercy petition. Yes, both conditions I have discussed an example with you. While signing the bill, our ex-president APJ Abdul Kalam sent it once back. The bill was related to the Office of Profit. In 2006, he sent it back. And mercy petition of Nirbhaya gang rape case, this was rejected by the president. So these are the examples which proved that president is not a puppet. He is also using his power and his real head. As the head of the state, the president enjoys the sovereign status, and by virtue of this fact, he can play a highly meaningful role in the working of the Indian political system. So you see students, here today I have discussed with you all the executive in India who are elected, that's the Prime Minister with Council of Ministers and the President. President is head of the state and Prime Minister is the head of the government. Now finally I can say you the position and role of the President is very important in India. No doubt the Constitution makes him nominal head, but still there are some powers which he can use by his own discretion, and this makes him the real head. Now, today I have discussed with you. First of all, I have discussed the introduction of the topic. Then I have discussed the Parliamentary Executive of India, its salient features. Then I have discussed the Indian Executive, that's the President of India. Then I have talked about the powers of the President, executive powers, legislative powers, financial powers, judicial powers, emergency powers, and finally I have discussed the position and role of the President. Students, again I am telling you this covers your pages from 273 till 284. Now the topic related questions are: first is discuss the powers and position of the President of India. Second, discuss the features of the parliamentary executive as it operates in India. Third, discuss the emergency powers of the President of India. Fourth, discuss the role of the President in the Indian political system. Fifth, what is the rationale for granting titles and honors by the executive in India? Sixth, explain the legislative powers of the President of India. Seventh, discuss the judicial powers of the President of India. Give example. What are the financial powers of the President of India? 9. List the cabinet ministers with their role. 10th. List the ministers of state with their departments. What is their function? 11th. What is the major role played by deputy ministers in saving the government in the legislature? So, students, I hope you are clear about today's topic and you will do these questions as I have given here and make your notes very neatly. Next time, I will discuss the same chapter, next topic. Till then, goodbye. Thank you.